From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Along with us today, the soon-to-be new president here at K-State, Richard Linton. He'll visit with us about a variety of things, his background as a food scientist and an administrator at 3 other leading land-grant universities, which he says has helped prepare him for this leadership role, the great stock he puts in the land-grant foundation of teaching, research, and extension, and his immediate and long-term aspirations for the university in service to agriculture and rural Kansas. Plus, a number of other things we'll take up with Dr. Linton next. Later on this week's horticulture segment, Shelby Varner talks with K-State's Ward Upham about dormant overseeding a cool season lawn. All that here on Agriculture Today. Thanks for tuning in once more for another Agriculture Today. On today's edition, an absolute pleasure to visit now with the soon-to-be 15th president of Kansas State University. He's currently the Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University. Dr. Richard Linton is his name. Dr. Linton, congratulations on the new appointment, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation to be with you this morning. I've been looking forward to this conversation and interview, and I just can't wait to get on campus at Kansas State. I'm ready to go.
You'll be here in February officially. Tell us about your background, and you do have a strong background in agriculture, in food science in particular, prior to and including your stint as the Dean of Agriculture at North Carolina State. Tell us just where you come from, so to speak.
So I'm a product of 4 land grants. This will actually be my 5th land grant. Coming to Kansas State University, I was a student at Virginia Tech, where I received all 3 of my degrees, my bachelor's in biology and then my master's and PhD in food science. I then went on to work almost 17 years at Purdue University as a faculty member and a center director. I was department head at The Ohio State University, and then most recently as the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences the past decade at NC State University. I am a food scientist. I am a food microbiologist. And when I started my career at Purdue University as a faculty member, I had a 3-way appointment, extension, research, and teaching in that order, and was responsible for integrating all of the missions of the land grant. Really enjoyed that as a faculty member, and I think that's kind of led me to an interest to provide leadership as a department head dean and now university president. In my 17 years at Purdue University as a food scientist, most of my work, I worked in the areas in post-production agriculture and trying to make meat and poultry and fruit and vegetable products safer, microbial safety, and also trying to extend the shelf life. I also created a center there called the Center for Food Safety Engineering, which worked on detection, innovative and novel techniques for the detection of foodborne pathogens. Along my time at Purdue as a food scientist, I worked with a lot of faculty at Kansas State. In fact, I was involved every year in the Rapid Methods course that Dan Fung used to hold. I then went on to become department head at Ohio State University, was there for a couple of years, and I went to Ohio State because of the interaction with the food industry and wanted to gain a better insight about that working relationship with the industry, and then came about a decade or so ago to NC State University, where all sorts of great things have happened in the college in the last 10 years. Most notably, we've got 3 really big initiatives, one around plant sciences, one around the food animal industry, and another around food manufacturing and food processing. And all of these initiatives have one thing in common: bringing multiple disciplines together to solve the really complex and difficult challenges, and having a private-public partnership with our external stakeholders to leverage our ideas and our resources to make better things happen than we could on our own.
You bring up those 3 principles, and do you hope to translate those kinds of things then to Kansas State University?
I'm hoping to take everything I've learned at the other 4 land-grant institutions and try to melt it into what's needed here at Kansas State. You know, every place is a little bit different. I think what I bring to the table is going to be very important, but understanding the culture and how to adapt those best practices is going to be really important for me to try to understand and and figure out as we get out of the gate. But I'm coming to Kansas State to be able to try to make things happen. Right. I want to make this the very best land-grant institution that we can make for the state of Kansas, but I also want to make it a really great environment for faculty, students, and staff to live and work.
You did, in your opening remarks when you were introduced as the next president of K-State last week, very much embrace the land-grant model. How do you see its present-day role in higher education?
I think we're more relevant than we've ever been before. If you look at, I don't have the specific numbers from Kansas, but I'm sure that they're not very different than North Carolina. Over 93% of our students have a job before they graduate. And that just shows the relevance and the importance of agriculture and food systems. And if you look at one of the grand global challenges, it's global population. And this global population is growing at an exponential rate. We're going to have to find a way to be able to feed not only our state and our country, but our world, which means that there's going to be more opportunities available in the agriculture and food sector. I think, too, the land-grant institution is the only kind of university that's connected in every single part of the state through cooperative extension, as well as through our research station network. And we need to take advantage of that and try to identify how we can help communities, how we can help farmers, how we can help the agribusiness industry, and maybe more importantly, how we can help the state of Kansas grow economically by creating jobs and building a better network to grow the economy within the state. And all of those kinds of things have been a string throughout the other land-grant institutions I've been involved with, and I hope to be able to bring some of that to the state of Kansas.
Having listed those opportunities, were there any particular things that led you to seek out this position at K-State? Did something in specific catch your eye, to put it that way?
Yeah, it's a great question. I drew my professional pathway with my mentor, Randy Woodson, who's the chancellor, which is the equivalent of a president, but at NC State. And at the time, he was at Purdue University as the provost. And we drew out some ideas around what my professional career might look like. And while there's lots of branches to the tree, the line was a faculty member, department head, dean, and a president or a chancellor at a university. So I was pretty focused on that being an aspiration in my career. Then the goal was, how do I strategically create the tool set that's needed to be successful? But all along that thinking, it has to be a land grant. I love land grants. I love the integration of research, teaching, and extension. I love the meaningfulness and the value that it brings to the home state. And so for me, it was always, what is that land grant institution where I feel like I can contribute, where I feel like I can be successful, but it's a good fit for the land grant and it's a good fit for me. Kansas State, for many reasons, is a good fit, I believe, for me. The strong foundation with agriculture is very important to me, and me having that background, I think, will help me with this position. The community aspects of Kansas State was a big draw factor for me. And it's interesting, as I read about the vice president of research and the provost, a big piece about why they came to Kansas State was the community and the feeling in Manhattan, Kansas, but also the feeling around the state of Kansas. And so I think those were two very important pieces, but I also see Kansas State in a place that NC State was 9 years ago, and I've seen NC State just launch. And I think some of the same kinds of opportunities are available right here in Kansas, and I'd like to try to make some of that happen.
Might expand on that just a touch here, the parallels between what's been happening at North Carolina State and how you envision that potentially applying at K-State. When you use the phrase launch, what sorts of tangible things have happened at NCSU?
Research innovation. If you look at the college as an example, we've been challenged with major budget cuts, like everyone around the country has been challenged, both at the state side and the federal side. We've had a 28% cut in our budget in the last 9 years. But we've been able to more than double our research capacity with competitive grantsmanship. And I think a similar model could play forward here, where it's all about understanding what are the needs of Kansas, what are the needs nationally and globally, and what is the niche, and what is the expertise, and what is the interest with faculty and staff on campus? And how do we melt that together? How do we identify interdisciplinary teams? How do we partner with other colleges on campus that perhaps we're not partnering as much as we can be today? How do we integrate with education? How do we integrate with the business school and the College of Engineering? And it's these kinds of things that we've been able to do at NC State University that's made a huge difference on the research innovation side. And when you've got better, stronger research innovation, that's where partnerships come into play. And you start working with companies. We just had a great meeting yesterday on data analytics and plant sciences, and talked about the partnerships with SAS and Microsoft and BASF and Bayer and Novozymes and the Novo Nordisk Foundation. I'm looking, at least on the research side, about trying to incorporate some of this thinking as we move forward at Kansas State. On the student side, what do we do to make this university as attractive as we can make it so that parents and guidance counselors and prospective students in the 9th and 10th grade are starting to think about Kansas State and perhaps a degree in the College of Agriculture at Kansas State? What does a student look like in moving forward? It's certainly the 4-year degree, but there's 2-year degrees. There might be partnerships with community colleges. There might be certificate programs. And think about the opportunities for cooperative extension that they can play in all 105 counties to be able to change the future outlook about what a student can be. So lots of ideas in my head. My goal is to try to push some of these forward and see which ones stick and see which ones don't, and work with those that stick.
Very well. We're talking here with the newly named president of Kansas State University come the month of February, Dr. Richard Linton, currently the Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University. More from him shortly. This is Agriculture Today. We're back now on Agriculture Today, and once more we're very fortunate on today's edition to have a conversation with the soon-to-be new president of Kansas State University. Once more he will come to Manhattan in February after a 10-year stint as Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University. Dr. Richard Linton, I want to ask you this. What would you like to know, Dr. Linton, about Kansas agriculture and the agri-industry in this state that you're not already currently acquainted with in your past experiences as a food scientist and agricultural administrator?
Yeah, the answer is everything. I'm going to be spending a lot of time, as I'd mentioned the other day, listening and learning. And a big part of that's agriculture. It's certainly other aspects as well in the state, but my job and my goal is to get out there and ask the important questions. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? Where do you see Kansas State and where do you see Kansas agriculture today versus 10 years from now? We did a lot of that when I started at NC State, and it's completely changed the fabric and the culture about who we are and how we work together. And these are the kinds of things that I'd like to do here as well. But in short, the answer is everything. I want to know what people think we should be doing that we're not, and what people think we should be doing that we should continue, and the difficult questions, what we shouldn't be doing that we're doing today in order to move aside to be able to make room for new opportunities.
This need for improved agricultural research and teaching facilities at land-grant universities, that's become something of a national cause in recent years. Funding is a large component of that. What can institutions like K-State do directly to confront and address that?
Yeah, it's a big challenge nationwide. In fact, APLU, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, did a nationwide study a few years ago, and one of our deans in the state just to the south of us, Tom Kuhn, who's the dean of the College of Agriculture at Oklahoma State, was one of the leading efforts in that. And it basically identified we've got a significant problem around the country relative to not only research infrastructure, but extension infrastructure all over our nation and all over our states. And, most of these facilities were built in the 60s and 70s. And unfortunately, nationally, little has been done to repair and renovate or to construct new facilities. We need to work together in the state of Kansas, and we need to work together across the region and across the U.S. to be able to improve the infrastructure. And that's already happening in conjunction with APLU. But I think there's also going to be some opportunities within the state to think about what infrastructure needs we're going to have. If we're going to push forward, one of the strongest economic components of our state, we need to make sure that we are providing the space and the environment for the best research and best education possible. So it's something we all need to work on together.
Is there a simple remedy? Probably not.
I don't know that there's a simple remedy, but I think the remedy is going to be multifaceted. I think that remedy could include components of state support, federal support, stakeholder support, university support. I think all of those things need to be put on the table to be able to figure out how we move forward. But I know that if we don't find the solution, we can't have the expectation that we're going to have the research innovation that we need and be able to educate our stakeholders and their student in the way in which they deserve.
Something that's right in your wheelhouse as a career food scientist, and food safety has been a priority there. How would you perceive future working relationships between K-State and the National Bio and Agro-Defense Facility? NBAF is expected to be up and fully operational in a couple of years. Have you had time to contemplate that?
I have, and I think it's a huge opportunity to build better partnerships, specifically with USDA ARS as an example, with BRI and with NBAF now both in place. Kansas State has had expertise in this area for a long, long time, and bringing NBAF to the table, there's no other place like it in the world. I've already proactively reached out to Dr. Shavonda Jacobs-Young, who's the Deputy Administrator of USDA ARS, and we're already talking about what those partnerships could look like in moving forward. I've got a long history in working with Shavonda Jacobs-Young. She helped provide federal support to our plant sciences initiative here at NC State by helping to construct almost a $31 million building on our campus. And she's excited that I'm at Kansas State, and I'm excited to start those conversations about, what other partnerships can happen with USDA ARS, as well as other federal and state partners that we haven't yet envisioned. When you have a facility and you bring in people that is best in the world, expect opportunities to come your way. And we need to do everything we can to stimulate those opportunities and to move forward on them.
We've talked about several things, but what are the immediate priorities upon your arrival in February?
Yeah, and very 50,000-foot thinking. Again, it's about me trying to make this the best land grant that I can to be able to serve the citizens of Kansas and create the best working environment for our faculty and staff and the best learning environment that I can for our students. It's going to take a lot of listening and a lot of learning up front to be able to figure out where we are and where we'd like to be. And with that end goal in mind, there's all sorts of ways in order to be able to get there. I certainly see this is a place where research innovation is going to be important. The capacity to be able to do more research, interdisciplinary research, as I had mentioned, building partnerships within our state and out of our state with our stakeholders, as well as with other universities in the region. That's an interest that I have as well. But anything that we can do to excite the faculty and staff and to energize them about creating the best land grant possible, that's what I'm hoping to do and hoping to learn over the next several months about what that strategic path looks like.
And all of it will build upon itself, but as you look 5 years down the road then, what should K-State look like at that point?
I'd like to be able to say we're a better place. I'd like to be able to say that we're better connected with the state of Kansas, that we're doing things today that we didn't think about doing 5 years ago. That's the special string that somehow I've been able to bring to the table at Purdue and Ohio State and NC State. We ended up doing things during and after my term that we wouldn't even consider thinking about doing beforehand. And I'm not exactly sure about how that happens, but somehow I've been able to figure out how to build a team and how to adapt to those opportunities and to excite people, to have them envision things in a different way. And that's what I'm hoping we'll be saying in 5 years. I don't know what specifically we'll be saying, but I'd like us to be able to say, boy, we're doing things and thinking about things today that we weren't thinking about 5 years ago. If I can do that, then I will have done a good job in the first 5 years in this presidency.
Well, one final thing, as you've been good enough to allow us this time today, Dr. Linton, this was actually the day after your announcement as the new president. The university rolled out its economic plan for Kansas, and hopefully you've had an opportunity to at least look at that in part, which captures a lot of what you've just said as far as research, extension, outreach, and so forth. Your thoughts on that plan and how it can dovetail well with your mission here.
Yeah, that was one of the other facets that made me have interest in this position, was a statewide look at what's going to be important for higher education. And if you look at the three pillars of the Board of Regents' futuristic plan, it's about creating a better environment for the student, whether that's affordability or accessibility. But the other two pieces are around building the economy. And so what I like about the thinking, and not so much the plan, but the conversations that I've had with the vice president of research, it's all about how do we build the economy? How do we create new opportunities for our farmers and those in agribusiness, as an example for your listeners here today? But also, how do we create jobs? And how do we work with the state of Kansas to be able to create this energy, which is in the best benefit of Kansas, but also in the best benefit of Kansas State. And certainly agriculture is going to be a very, very big piece of that. So I'm very excited that we're laser focused on the economy, because that's where we should be laser focused, on what we can do to help communities, but also what we can do to be able to help improve the state of Kansas. And certainly helping the economy is a very, very important first step.
Sounds like you're chomping at the bit to get going, Dr. Linton. Fair to say?
Fair to say.
Very good. Greatly looking forward to your arrival here at Kansas State in early 2022, February to be exact, as the 15th president of this institution. Best wishes for your appointment here. Looking forward to having you here in Manhattan soon. Thank you, Dr. Linton.
I'm very much looking forward to being there on the 14th of February, and looking forward to getting out there and listening to folks. And I'm going to need everybody's support if we're all to move forward and to make a difference.
It's been a distinct pleasure. Thank you once again for your time.
You're welcome.
He is Dr. Richard Linton, and he is currently the Dean of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University, but soon to be, again, the new president at Kansas State University. We'll be back with more. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. I'm Shelby Varner with this week's horticulture segment, and we are joined by Ward Upham, a horticulturist with K-State Research and Extension, here to talk about dormant seeding of turfgrass. Ward, thank you for joining us today.
You bet.
What are the cool season grasses?
So the cool season grasses we're going to be talking about are tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass. There are others that are used on golf courses like creeping bent and perennial rye, but we're going to be talking about tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass, not the warm season grasses, not Bermuda, zoysia, or buffalo. What we're going to talk about today won't apply to them.
These are important grasses. When is the best time to seed these cool season grasses?
The best time is actually in the fall. You were talking about late August through September. In a case of tall fescue, maybe mid-October. Bluegrass, late September is about as late as you can go if you're going to get a good stand before winter comes.
If it's not the right time to seed, why are we talking about it today?
Yes, so now if you still have bare areas you didn't get taken care of in the fall, this is a time when you can dormant overseed, and therefore that will allow those plants to come up as early in the spring as possible so that you can get a good stand next spring. It's not the best time, but it's the second best time to seed, better than trying to seed in the spring. And the reason for that is spring seedings, if you have a wet spring, it may delay your seeding late enough that those plants aren't going to be mature enough to survive the summer. And so this is the second best time to seed. Again, it's just for small areas, not for a whole lawn.
And what's an important factor of having a successful seeding?
The most important thing is to have good seed-soil contact. You've got to have that. If you just scatter seed on top of the ground, often it's not going to come up. You're also going to have birds that are going to eat a lot of that seed. Even with dormant seeding, you have some birds eating the seed, but we're seeding at a normal rate, which is enough that even if they do eat some of the seed, it's going to be fine.
That is good news. So are there different methods to seeding?
There's actually 4 different methods you can use, 2 of which are really simple, but they're dependent on the weather, and the last 2 are a little bit more work. So the first one is just to wait for a snow, and you want a snow that's up to an inch, and then once you get that, you can broadcast the seed over those bare areas. And as that snow melts, they'll take it into the soil so that you have good seed-soil contact, and it's going to be fine. It's going to make a very nice seed bed. The second is also dependent on the weather, and that you have to have wet soil followed by freezing temperatures. In that case, what you're going to notice is that as that soil freezes, it forms these natural pockets that hold seed very well. So while that soil is still frozen, you broadcast your seed, and as it thaws, it collapses the soil, and again, you have a very good seed bed. So again, very simple, very quick, very easy. The last 2 are more work, and one of those is to broadcast the seed and then top dress with a light covering of soil. You're actually spreading a light covering of soil over that seed so that you have, again, good seed-soil contact. And the last is the traditional method. You can use either a verticut or a slit seeder, something like that. Or really, if you have small areas, it's easier just to broadcast the seed and use a hand rake in order to make sure you get good seed-soil contact. Regardless of method used, that's going to allow you that seed to come up as early in the spring as possible. And that's what you want. You want that seed to come up and be as established as possible by the time summer hits, because that's the hard time of the year for these cool season grasses. It's not the winter. They can come through the winter with no problem. It's that you have to have a fairly mature plant before summer gets here.
And out of these 4 different methods, what's your preference or what's your highest recommendation to someone?
The first 2 would be, if you can get the right conditions, they would be the ones I would choose, just because they are quick and easy and they are effective. The next one would probably be probably hand raking, if you have just small spots, because again, it's fairly quick and easy. If you have lawn that is really thin and you're just trying to thicken up the whole lawn, then maybe a slit seeder or a verticut. Slit seeder is the same as a verticut, except it has a seed hopper, so it does everything in one operation. Verticut cuts the grooves, and then you have to broadcast the seed. And then that will give you, either way, will give you a good chance of getting a good thick lawn.
Thank you, Ward, for coming in and talking about dormant seeding of turfgrass.
Sure thing.
That was Ward Upham, a horticulturist with K-State Research and Extension. I'm Shelby Varner, and this has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.